Look.
At one point, I'd say Evan was about maybe 7 or 8. He and I were home, and once again, he started to talk about wanting to kill himself. There were a lot of times where he would tell me specifically what he was going to do. He was going to jump out the window, he was going to jump off a building, he was going to cut himself, or in this particular occasion, he was going to hang himself. He took this pillow thing with a strap on it and climbed up on his bunk bed, and he affixed it up there. And then he put it around his neck, and he showed me how he was going to jump off the bunk bed. He's going to show Mom how he's going to hang himself right in front of her. And I didn't let him. But I'm tired of trying to explain to people what I'm hearing at home, and I'm just going to record this. I always felt so guilty about taking those pictures. But I was so tired of explaining to people my son wants to kill himself. I just needed some kind of proof that this is really happening, because it was so impossible to believe.
It felt to me always like there was a mask or something there. And I remember that look going over him, that unreachable look.
When Evan went through a mood swing, his whole body changed. His face changed, his physical attitude changed, his ability to communicate changed. And you literally saw it in his face. He became unreachable. Hart and I started to call it the fugue state. He sort of go like this. The physical change would be like a slackening of his face. It just wasn't engaged. Something receded. And what you had was this kind of thing, this facade. There was a tone of voice that went along with it, too, a very flat tone of voice.
Yeah. Oh, what do you mean? Yeah, I am.
He could be very sullen.
God be in control.
What did you say?
God.
No, that's not nice. You seem to have skipped being a kid and gone immediately to being an adolescent. How was the football game yesterday?
That's the kind of thing you expect from your 15-year-old. You know, you're not the boss of me, and come on, give me the car keys, or where are you going out? You know, what'd you do in school? Nothing. I mean, that seems normal. In a 7-year-old, it doesn't seem normal. And he was very teenage. He was, along with that, though, he's also very sophisticated.
She's my hour, absolute power.
He did not have a Britney Spears phase. He did not have a Backstreet Boys phase. He went straight to Dylan, Neil Young, Nirvana, and he wrote a lot of songs.
Should have been, could have been, would have been dead if I didn't get the message going on in my head. You asked me how, I told you. You said, wow, take it now since you learned it, that how.
His lyrics touched on things that you can't imagine a kid that young would even think about.
You would think it's all a freeze. If I could be cutting myself on the neck, threading you with my knife, saying you're gonna die tonight. Stop! Well, that's because I'm depressed, nothing less, curious, furious. So somebody kill me, please. I'm standing on my knees. Somebody kill me, please. Pretty, pretty, please. I'm standing on my knees.
Biscuit.
It's because I'm depressed. Okay, that's it.
When he was maybe 8 or 9, he kept a journal, and I saw it and took it out and started reading it, and there were these poems in it essentially saying, I'm prepared for death, I'm not afraid of death, these really deep poems. And I was probably 15, 16, and going through my moody phase, and I remember thinking, wow, these are thoughts I'm having right now. I felt there was something really powerful going on in his mind, that he had a sensitivity and maturity that was way beyond his years.
When he was 10, he said, let's do a play about someone dying, a boy dying. I said, well, what kind of story is that? He said, what? It's a story about a kid dying and all his friends, and they miss him.
How am I supposed to live without you? You're my big brother. Who's gonna take care of me? Walk me to school. Calm me down when I'm upset. Please, don't leave me.
Evan came up with a story that didn't make any sense, just someone died. And, you know, that they cry.
You said you would always be there for me. Well, I need you more than I ever have right now.
I think he wanted the play to be about the boy dying, which obviously was his character, and to be able to see it in a play that everybody loves him.
I know that.
When you leave, it's like, that's when everyone gets together and they miss you and they honor you.
He will always be with us. You don't have to look here or in heaven. Look in your heart and he'll be there.
So we decided to do the show, and that's when, Evan attempted, or came close to attempting suicide at PS 11.
The fall semester of 2000, when Evan was in 5th grade, he communicated to the principal of his school that he felt suicidal. We get a letter, and of course, I suggest a psychological evaluation. Well, I'm already in therapy. I'm already seeing a psychiatrist, and he's already on meds. I don't know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And 3 weeks later, he made an attempt at school. I got a call at my office. This is Mr. Delmonico from PS 11. This was about Evan. He said, it's very serious. You need to get here. And I'm like, you have to tell me what's going on. He said, he's up on the roof of his school, PS 11. It's probably 6 stories. And he took a chunk of pavement about the size of a hamburger and threw it down onto the playground where the other kids were. One of the teachers went out on the roof, and there was Evan, perched on the ledge. And Evan told him that he wanted to kill himself, that he was going to jump. The teacher told him that life was worth living and what was good about Evan, and that he was loved. And eventually Evan came down on his own. By the time I got there, he had been brought down into the principal's office, and we were there in the principal's office, and we decided to go straight from there to an emergency room. One of the residents asked him, do you know what it's like to be dead? He says, yeah, everybody gathers around and talks about how great you are.
We had Evan involuntarily committed to a mental institution because we were very, very concerned about his suicide attempt. We took it very seriously. The place he went was called Four Winds. It's outside of New York, and it's a lock-up psychiatric facility.
Evan was brought in by ambulance after having an incident at school. He was brought to the Deerfield unit, which is the unit I was working on at the time, which is for kids 8 to 12, and immediately assessed and evaluated. We were able to establish a pattern and saw that he definitely met the criteria for bipolar disorder. Known historically as manic depression. This is a chemical imbalance, a chemical illness in the brain. Some kids have more of a propensity towards depression, and some kids have more of a propensity towards mania. I think in Evan's case, it was definitely more depression. Bipolar depression is definitely more severe than just depression. And that's why suicide attempts are more common in kids with bipolar depression. And that's why it's scarier. Because you don't know how far he'll take it. You don't know if he actually would have jumped off that ledge at school. He had a tendency to blame other people or other situations instead of being able to say, okay, yeah, I get it. I did something I probably shouldn't have done. It scared a lot of people, and that's why I'm here. He just sort of said, all I wanted was someone to listen. And he just couldn't understand that his behaviors and the measures that he took were scary to people.
He didn't think that if he went and stood on the roof of school that anything would happen. So when he ended up in a hospital where it's locked down and they watch you every second and you're not allowed to do anything unless it's part of the schedule, and that there's other damaged kids and your parents can only visit once in a while, he just broke down. I mean, he just fell apart. He fell apart.
He was destroying property on the unit. He was very, very angry. At one point, I remember he drew all over his walls in his room, and we had to have him clean his walls. He also was tantruming a lot. He was angry a lot. He was banging his head and his arms up against a wall. When he was in the throes of a manic episode or a depressive episode, you couldn't reason. And you can't reason with a kid who's bipolar.
Visiting Evan at Four Winds was agonizing. Here was a kid who was in a lock-up psychiatric facility for seriously mentally ill kids, and coming to terms with your kid who seemed to have behavioral issues, but he could have just, be like an adolescent, that this is something you go through because he had so many really, charming, bright qualities. Four Winds was a real body punch. Evan was given a variety of medications. Depakote was one of them. He seemed really doped up. And then they suggested that he try lithium.
Lithium is a mood stabilizer, and it is used to level off the serotonin in the brain, as opposed to having the highs and lows to kind of even off the chemistry.
He really did start to respond to lithium. I mean, it was really pretty remarkable. But he was still, profoundly ill. So then the question became like, well, what do we do after this?
PS11 would not take him back, and there was no place for him to go, except for this very expensive alternative, which turned out to, I think, have saved his life for a number of years.
Suzanne Hanna, who was his therapist, recommended this place called Wellspring, which was what they call milieu therapy. Everything's an opportunity to learn how to live in the group, from doing the dishes and making meals to taking care of animals to taking care of younger children to chores and things like that.
Evan came to us from Four Winds Hospital, and they were pretty adamant that the bipolar disorder was managed medication-wise and that he was on the proper dosages, and that seemed to be the case.
That was the first night we were here. We sat right here, right?
Yep.
As I recall, you had us in first and kind of gave us a little heads up, and then Evan came in and had us, I think, sit in our laps.
Right.
And you told me to talk to him really honestly.
Right.
And I did. And it was like this incredible relief because I had permission to say what I was feeling without being afraid of breaking him. You know?
I remember. And you were like, really?
Yeah, I was like, really? Well, if I tell him that I'm afraid I'm going to find him dead, he'll explode.
Right.
And the world will end, and, you know, all of this stuff will come rushing out, and it will be poisonous,
right.
and we won't be able to survive it. And I think to all of our amazement,
right.
we not only survived, but started building, you know, on that.